Welcome to Navkar Digital Institute, India's first virtual learning platform for professional coaching. In today's session, friends, we'll talk about the composition scheme under GST. Now, as I think everybody is aware that composition scheme is mainly governed by Section 10 of CGST Act. So CGST Act of Section 10 of CGST Act basically talks about different aspects with regard to composition scheme. Let us first try and understand what is the base of composition scheme. So let us try and talk about the pre-GST era. So when I say pre-GST era, we are referring to excise, we are referring to service tax, we are referring to sales tax or what we called as VAT. So in each of this act, a special type of scheme was drafted. I would say in excise, it was clearly known as composition scheme, which was granted under, I think there was a notification which was issued in 2011, mainly referred as notification number 1 and 2/2011, where almost they have talked about some 130 products, like there was ice cream, there were certain types of biscuits, wafers, and lot many other products. In respect of all such goods, a special notification was issued, and it was very clearly mentioned that as compared to the original rate of excise, which was at that point of time 12%, which was revised to 12.5% later on. So as compared to the normal rate of 12 or 12.5%, they were giving you an option to pay tax at the rate 1% or at the rate 2%. And that was considered as composition scheme, which was considered as you have to pay 12% or 12.5% with ITC, and if you go for composition scheme, then you just have to pay 1% or 2%, and that too without using any form of ITC. So that was there in excise. A similar scheme was there in VAT also. That was available to traders. And specifically, they were supposed to pay 1% flat tax, or rather I would say 0.5% flat tax, depending on state to state. कुछ state ने 0.5 रखा था, कुछ state ने 1% रखा था, but a flat percentage tax was there as compared to original rate. So आपकी product 4% में आती हो, 5% में आती हो, 12.5% में आती हो, 15% में आती हो, 20% में आती हो, कोई भी category में आ रही है, but you will have an option to pay tax at the rate 0.5%, a flat percentage of your turnover, and in that case you are eligible for composition scheme, and there were conditions involved. So excise was having a composition norm, VAT was also having a composition norm, but to be precise, service tax was not having a composition norm, and that's the only reason GST में भी service provider के लिए composition scheme draft नहीं हुआ है. The scheme has been drafted only for manufacturers. The scheme has been drafted only for traders. The point is, it is nowhere drafted for service providers. However, a new composition scheme has been introduced in GST. A new composition scheme which has been introduced in GST is just introduced, I think on 1st February 2019, they have introduced that scheme. Though it is never named as composition scheme, but more or less all the provisions are related to composition scheme, and that is drafted only for service providers, friends. So a separate category or separate scheme has been identified for service providers, and that is almost like a composition scheme, though it is not covered by Section 10. Section 10 जो composition scheme की बात करता है, उस Section 10 का reference नहीं दिया हुआ है इस scheme के अंदर, but more or less सारे provision same ही है. So पहले मैं जो सेक्शन 10 से गवर्न होता है कंपोजिशन स्कीम, उसके सारे पॉइंट्स आपको एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूं. Once we are done with that composition scheme as per section 10, then we will switch over to this special scheme which has been brought only for service provider. And I'll tell you, in terms of comparison, almost every criteria is same. There are only 5-10% plus minor things which have been provided, which we need to consider separately for service providers. बाकी सारे criteria same ही है. So ये बात की मैंने आपको brief with regard to introduction of composition scheme. So ये pre-GST era से ही carry forward हो रहा है, और the basic objective इसका एक ही है कि promotion. Like I'll give you an example why we call it as promotion. So when I say first aspect to understand why we call this as promotional scheme, so I think everybody is aware that in GST we have a registration limit of 20 lakh. In some states 10 lakh, but on an average general limit is 20 lakh. Now, when your turnover is above 20 lakh, you need to, when your turnover crosses 20 lakh, you need to get yourself registered, and then you need to start paying tax. And when your turnover is below 20 lakh, so you don't need to get yourself registered, and only a registered person is liable for tax. So since you are not registered, you are not liable for tax. So considering that point, अगर मेरा turnover 10 लाख है या 15 लाख है तो मुझे कोई टैक्स भरने की जरूरत नहीं रहेगी, assuming I am not registered. The important aspect over here is why there is a limit of 20 lakh. Why government is considering such limit? So if your turnover is above 20 lakh, you start paying tax. If your turnover is below 20 lakh, you don't need to pay anything. Why such limits have been kept by government? So the only objective is they are promoting small players, small industries, I would say. जिनका turnover 20 lakh से नीचे है, those people will be considered as small industries, small players from the perspective of GST, and they are not liable for GST. And if your turnover crosses that limit, then you will not be considered as longer a small player, and that is why you are liable for GST. So basically, it is a distinguishment which has been created under the GST law, and I think you guys have studied economics in your school days as well as probably in first year of your CA career. So you must be aware that government in terms of economic is continuously promoting entrepreneurship and small businesses. So as a promotional aspect, they say, okay, so far as you reach the turnover of 20 lakh, we are not interested in charging any tax on you. We are not interested that you should go into all this nonsense litigations and other aspects. Rather, you should continue to fall under the normal criteria. So this is what has been clearly prescribed under the composition scheme for every small player. Now the important aspect is, if you are below 20 lakh, then you are not liable for registration. But if you are above 20 lakh, then what? Okay, then in that case you are liable for registration as well as you are liable for tax. But the concern matter that comes over here is 20 लाख के ऊपर सब लोग एक ही कैटेगरी में ट्रीट होंगे. Everybody should be treated at par when it crosses 20 lakh. What about those people who are having turnover of 25 lakh, and what about those people who are having turnover of 2500 crore? I mean, you treat everyone at par only. I mean, don't you think so? There should be a further segregation also. So 20 lakh tak we understand. But above 20 lakh, everybody comes under same category. So okay, there should be something else. So that is where the further segregation has been done. कि भाई below 20 lakh, okay. 20 lakh से लेके there is a higher limit, upper limit. And if you fall under that limit, that is where you come under composition scheme. So a special scheme has been drafted. A special scheme has been drafted just to promote the composition dealers. What is the concept of scheme? So, okay, as I said, if you are below 20 lakh, you don't pay tax. If you are above 20 lakh, but up to some turnover, what will be that turnover? That turnover is continuously changing. Originally बोला था 50 lakh, then revised to 75 lakh, then revised, and then further revised. अभी recently revised हुआ है. So continuously they are changing it. But let's not go into that turnover as of now. The point is 20 lakh up to some limit, then you will be eligible for composition scheme, and after that you will be covered under normal scheme. Now कोई बोले चलो मान लो कि ओके एक लिमिट तक है तो मैं कंपोजिशन स्कीम में फॉल हो गया. अब व्हाट आर माय एडवांटेजेस, व्हाट बेनिफिट? जैसे कि बिलो 20 लाख है तो आई एम 100% एट एडवांटेज कि आई डोंट हैव टू पे टैक्स. So above 20 lakh, up to one limit, okay, I fall under composition scheme, and since it's a promotional scheme, I am going to get an advantage. But what is my advantage? So that advantage is you have to pay a very lower amount in terms of tax. What is that? So, okay, I believe everybody is aware that under GST, under normal circumstances, we have different rates. So for example, like we have 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. So अगर मान लो कि मैं ऐसी कोई प्रोडक्ट में डील कर रहा हूँ where the liability to pay tax is at the rate 28%, तो practically speaking मुझे उस प्रोडक्ट के ऊपर 28% चार्ज करना पड़ेगा. But if I am falling under composition scheme, then forget about 28% and I end up paying 1% tax only. So this is my advantage. If I fall under composition scheme, I don't have to pay tax at a normal rate, rather I have to pay tax at a special rate, and that rate will be 1%. So the important aspect that you need to keep in mind is, if you are below 20 lakh, you don't have to pay anything. If you are above 20 but up to one limit which qualifies as composition limit, then you have to pay tax, but you have to pay at a very lower rate. And when you cross the composition scheme, you start paying tax under the normal circumstances. So this is what I'm trying to tell you in terms of advantages. Okay, what is your biggest advantage of following composition scheme? There are other benefits also, but we will consider those points at a subsequent stage. Let us first try and analyze if I'm paying tax at a normal rate, then what amount I'll end up paying and at what price the product will go to the market. And if I'm following the composition scheme, then at what price the product will go to the market and what amount I'll end up paying. Let us try and understand that based on this example. let us say we are talking about the tax structure of payment and this is what we understand in normal category. So under normal criteria अगर मैं बात करूं कि let us say मैं एक particular product buy कर रहा हूं जिसका value है 100 रुपए and उसके ऊपर GST charge हो रहा है 18%. So 18 rupees will be that and that will turn out to be 118 rupees is my purchase value. Now, since I am under normal scheme, I am always eligible for all the ITC and every other aspect. So in my books, my raw material cost will be 100 and my tax ITC will be 18 rupees. So material account debit will be 100 and ITC input tax credit account debit 18. So this is my prima facie entry. Now ये जो material 100 है, I'll make a value addition into that because I'm doing some processing on those goods. So on 100 I'll make an addition and probably my selling price assumed amount is 200 rupees. So at 200 I'll offer this product to the market, to the customer on which I'm liable to pay GST at the rate 18% again. So I'll pay 36 rupees as GST. Now the point is 36 is my output tax payable while my inward tax is already 18. So I'll set off that and I'll pay 18 rupees extra. And I'll charge 236 from my customer. I'll tell him that 236 out of which 200 is my product value and 36 my tax amount. You give me 236. When you give me 236, I'll pay 18 rupees out of that to the government. So ultimately this is what happens when you are under normal category. Now the point is, let us try and segregate this transaction in terms of composition scheme. So let us again assume that I buy something under normal category and in normal category I am buying at 100. And plus 18 rupees tax is there. So I am purchasing at 118 rupees. Now the important aspect is the composition scheme has a basic condition which says you are nowhere eligible for ITC. आपको कोई ITC नहीं मिलेगा. क्यों नहीं मिलेगा, कैसे नहीं मिलेगा, वो सब मैं आपको एक्चुअल थियोरेटिकली प्रोविजंस में समझाऊंगा. बट कंपोजिशन स्कीम हैज अ वेरी बेसिक कंडीशन व्हिच सेज यू आर नोवेयर एलिजिबल फॉर आईटीसी. सो योर रॉ मटेरियल परचेज वैल्यू विल नॉट बी रिकॉर्डेड एज 100 एंड आईटीसी एट 18. रादर योर परचेज वैल्यू विल बी रिकॉर्डेड एज 118 ओनली. Because I am nowhere going to get an ITC of whatever taxes have been paid on purchases. So your raw material account debited will be 118 rather than raw material account 100 and ITC account 18. So your raw material account debited will be 118. And on that 118, we'll make a value addition of 100 rupees from our side. So that means my product will be sold in market at 218 rupees. So value of goods that I'm selling is 218 rupees. Now someone would say, sir, 218, what about the taxes to be charged on that 218? So frankly speaking, composition scheme very clearly says that you have to pay tax at a lower rate, where I've said the tax rate will be 1%. But the more important point is, when you pay tax under composition scheme, it very clearly says that the tax amount is not to be charged separately from customer. Meaning thereby the price at which you are offering goods to customer probably is a full and final price. The tax should not be charged from the customer. Rather you end up paying tax from your own pocket. माने तो कि कुछ नहीं, आप उसको 218 रुपए में प्रोडक्ट दे दो. You can't charge tax separately. You have to charge only 218, which is the price of the product. No tax to be charged separately from the customer. So what will happen is that 218, when I'll offer the product to the customer, the important aspect is I'll not charge any tax from him. However, law says you pay fixed 1% of the price. So 218 is a price, so 1% of that is 2.18. Let us round it off to 2 rupees. So you end up paying 2 rupees tax in this case. But that 2 rupees you can't charge separately from customer like the way you were charging over here. Here you were charging 200 plus 36 rupees. So you were charging 236 from customer. But in composition scheme, you can't charge tax from customer. So 200 is your full and final price, not to be charged anything extra from customer. Now, the important aspect is that 2 rupees tax that you will pay will straight away go to your P&L as an expense. It will be recorded in books as an expense, जो हम खर्चे में set off कर देंगे. Now, the important aspect is whether I should follow normal scheme or I should follow composition scheme considering both these aspects. So practically speaking, if I am following normal scheme, I am paying selling product at 236. And if I am following composition scheme, probably I will end up selling the product at 218. So the concern matter is, if you look from the customer's perspective, he will always be willing to buy a product at the cheapest available price. So if a customer buys from a person who is following normal scheme, he'll buy at 236. While if he'll buy from a customer who is coming under the composition category, he'll end up buying at 218. So it is more advisable from the customer's perspective that he should buy a product from a person who is under normal scheme or he is under a composition scheme. Answer is he is under a composition scheme because you will end up buying at a cheaper price. But friends, ये भी एक part answer है, ये half-hearted answer है. जो actual answer है, that purely depends on your customer base, that who is your customer. Let me try and analyze this. If I'm selling the product to an end user who is never interested in any form of ITC, then in that case, if normal person will sell the product to him, he will sell at 236, while under composition scheme you will sell at 218. So for him, 218 is a cheaper option. But the point is, if you are selling this product to a customer who is going to claim an ITC of the taxes charged by you, then in that case what will happen is, in 218 you are not going to charge any tax separately, so customer is nowhere aware that what is the tax amount and he'll never get an ITC of that. But the important point is this side which we are saying 236, the important concern is when you will sell it to the product from your tax invoice, he'll easily bifurcate that 200 is a value and 36 is the tax. So he'll take 36 as an ITC, so basically his net cost will amount to 200. So the important point is your customer base also plays an important role. If I am supplying goods to such a customer base where everybody is willing to claim ITC, then even if I am eligible for composition scheme, I should not opt for composition scheme because I will end up selling the product at a much higher price as compared to the normal scheme where because of the ITC the benefit is always available to the to the customer. But if I am dealing with a customer who is nowhere interested in any form of ITC, then in that case it is more advisable for me to go for a composition scheme rather than following the normal criteria. Under composition scheme, he will end up buying at 218. And in that case, this is a cheaper option as compared to 236. I'll just give you an example. मान लीजिए कि मैं अगर एक retail showroom खोल के बैठा हूँ, जहाँ पे मेरे जो customer base है वो सारे end users है, तो I don't think so I should go for a normal scheme. Rather, I'll always think of composition scheme because end users are never interested in any form of ITC. बट मान लो कि मैं कोई प्रोडक्ट के होलसेलर की तरह काम कर रहा हूं, मैं उसके डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर की तरह काम कर रहा हूं, वेयर आई विल सेल द प्रोडक्ट टू अ रिटेलर हु इज फर्दर गोइंग टू क्लेम आईटीसी, और आई एम वर्किंग एज अ मैन्युफैक्चरर एंड आई एम नॉट डीलिंग डायरेक्टली विद द एंड यूजर्स, रादर आई हैव अ डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन नेटवर्क वेयर माय कस्टमर्स आर डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स एंड रिटेलर्स हु आर इंटरेस्टेड इन आईटीसी, देन आई शुड ऑलवेज फॉलो composition scheme? No friends, I should always follow the normal scheme. So basically your customer base is the most important thing that decides that whether you should go for a composition scheme or you should follow the normal criteria. So most important aspect तो यही होता है ना कि customer base कौन है. So I think we understand this particular example to just analyze कि whether one should follow composition scheme or not. That purely depends on situation to situation. In fact, इसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे points है जो हम ध्यान में रखेंगे. Someone would come up with an answer that sir, in this scheme, since I am selling the product at 218, here it is 236, so my product is available at a cheaper rate to the customer. So in that case, customer will come to me only. So in that case, sir, I am getting an undue advantage as compared to normal customer. But friends, that is the basic objective. Government is promoting your business. So someone would say, sir, to what extent government will promote it? So as I said very clearly, a composition scheme also has a limit. Let us say कि आपका प्रोडक्ट सस्ता जा रहा है, उसके कारण आपका बिजनेस प्रमोट हो रहा है. So because of that, can I say your sales will increase, your turnovers will increase, it will keep on increasing, and one day it will cross the composition limit, and the day it will cross the composition limit, आपके लिए भी स्कीम बंद हो जाएगा, आप भी नॉर्मल कैटेगरी में चले जाओगे. So basically, government is very clear that we are promoting you. But we are promoting you only up to one turnover. जैसे कि अगर मान लो कि मैं मेरा टर्नओवर 20 से नीचे होता तो can I say I'll end up selling the product at 218 and मेरे को कोई एक्स्ट्रा टैक्स भी नहीं भरना है उसमें. तो जो मैंने बताया कि कंपोजिशन स्कीम में यू हैव टू पे 1% ऑफ योर टर्नओवर, यहाँ तो मुझे वो भी नहीं भरना है अगर मैं नॉर्मल स्कीम में हूँ. सो देन इन दैट केस आई एम फुल्ली एलिजिबल फॉर इंसेंटिव, बट दैट इंसेंटिव इज देयर ओनली अप टू 20 lakh. The moment I cross 20 lakh, मेरा वो इंसेंटिव बंद हो जाएगा. So I'll have a second incentive कि you still sell the product at 218 and you pay 1% tax, which is 2 rupees, and you pay from your own pocket and debit the entire amount into P&L as an expense. So that option is always available with you, but that is only again up to one limit. The moment you will cross turnover beyond the limit, so you will come under the normal category, क्योंकि अब तो तुम composition के लिए eligible ही नहीं हो, क्योंकि composition scheme has a monetary limit. So I think everybody understands the perspective that why government has introduced a scheme like composition scheme. Let us try and actually discuss the provisions given under the composition scheme to get a better clarity. So these are the provisions which are with regard to composition scheme. One of the first point that composition scheme is having is you must be a taxable person, and logically speaking, yes. So you must be a registered person, because every registered person is called taxable person in the eyes of the GST. So someone would say, sir, what if I am an unregistered? तो friends, अगर आप unregistered हो, आपका turnover 20 लाख से नीचे है, तो आप टैक्स ही नहीं भरने वाले हो, तो क्या composition scheme की बात कर रहे हैं? So this scheme is available only with regard to those people who are a taxable person. Further says, a taxable person whose aggregate turnover in preceding financial year has not crossed the limit. See, it says aggregate turnover in a preceding financial year does not exceed a limit. What is that limit? So the original limit was 50 lakh, which is mentioned over here. जो originally composition scheme आया था, उसमें जो limit रखा गया था, वो 50 lakh था. Over a period of time, government has modified this limit a lot. This 50 lakhs has been converted into 75 lakh over a period of time, which has been further converted into 100 lakh again over a period of time. And एकदम recently बात कर रहा हूँ अभी February 2019 में ही, that is last month ही, government ने ये limit को और बढ़ा दिया, and now the limit has been increased to 150 lakh, which is the current limit. So your aggregate turnover in a preceding financial year does not exceed 150 lakh. So the point is, when I say if my turnover is above 150 lakh, the point is you are straight away out of the composition scheme picture. You will remain in composition scheme only when your aggregate turnover is not exceeding 150 lakh rather, I would say. So aggregate turnover, किसका? तो क्या taxable person का. A taxable person whose aggregate turnover in preceding financial year does not exceed 150 lakh is eligible for composition scheme in current financial year. Now, there are a lot of perspective to this point. When I said does not exceed 150 lakh, so 150 lakh cross nahi karna chahiye means what will be there at exact 150 lakhs. So let us say if someone is having an exact turnover of 150 lakhs, can he claim composition scheme? Answer is yes. Answer is always yes, because the law says does not exceed 150 lakhs. So at 150 lakh you are always eligible for composition scheme. So let us take certain examples. Let us say my previous year turnover was 80 lakh. So can I claim current composition scheme in current year? Answer is yes. Let us say my current year turnover is 100 lakh. Can I claim composition scheme in subsequent year? Answer is yes. Let us say my current year turnover is 120 lakh. Can I claim composition scheme in subsequent year? Answer is yes. Let us say my turnover is 150 lakhs in current year. Can I claim composition scheme in subsequent year? Answer is yes. Let us say my turnover is 160 lakhs in current year. Now can I claim composition scheme in subsequent year? Your answer is no. Reason is very clear, friends, that your aggregate turnover in a preceding financial year does not exceed 150 lakh. The moment it exceeds 150 lakh, you are straight away out of composition scheme, and for every year you have to check its previous year. So अगर previous year में मेरा 140 है तो current year में मेरे को मिलेगा, but previous year में if that turnover is 160 lakhs, then current year I am not eligible for composition scheme. But yes, again, that does not mean that all subsequent years I am out of composition scheme. Let us take this point that मान लो कि in previous year I had a 160 lakh turnover, in current year I am eligible for composition scheme. Let us say I'm not eligible for composition scheme. Let us say in current year my turnover turns out to be 200 lakh. Then in subsequent year there is no question of claiming composition scheme. But point is, what if in current year my turnover is only 100 lakh? Can I claim composition scheme in subsequent year? Answer is yes. देखो प्रीवियस ईयर में 160 था तो करंट ईयर में नहीं ले पाया, बट करंट ईयर में 100 लाख है तो सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर में तो मैं एलिजिबल हूं ही ना. नोबडी कैन स्टॉप मी फ्रॉम फॉलोइंग कंपोजिशन स्कीम इन सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर बिकॉज द लॉ इज वेरी क्लियर. यू जस्ट हैव टू चेक द प्रीवियस ईयर टर्नओवर. The moment your previous year turnover is not crossing the limit, you are always eligible for composition scheme in current financial year. So it's on year-to-year basis that we need to follow. अच्छा, very important perspective which everybody has to keep in mind is what about the first year? Yes friends, मान लो कि इसी साल मेरा कंपनी स्टार्ट हुआ है. This year is the first year. Can I follow composition scheme? Number one point is, let us say this year my company has started and I am assuming कि मेरा turnover 20 lakh cross कर लेता है तो मैं registration भी ले लेता हूँ. So now, after obtaining registration, can I follow composition scheme? Because in my point is very clear. In previous year, I was not there. So since my business was not there, so can I follow composition scheme in current year? So our law is very clear. बोले previous year में आपका turnover अगर 150 lakh cross ना करे, you are eligible for composition scheme. Now this has two implied meaning. Number one, previous year में turnover 150 lakh से नीचे है. Number two, previous year में turnover ही नहीं है, because this is your first year. In both the cases, the current year is always eligible for composition scheme, meaning thereby in first year, every company is by default eligible for composition scheme. I am repeating the word. In first year, every company is by default eligible for composition scheme. Now, everywhere I've used the word as eligible for composition scheme. Does that mean it is mandatory or it is optional? The word is it is optional. It is nowhere mandatory. See, you have to follow composition scheme at your own discretion, provided you match the turnover norms. Once you match the turnover norms, you are eligible for composition scheme. It is not a mandatory scheme. So we will analyze that कि whether one should follow or one should not follow composition scheme. वैसे तो मैंने आपको एक calculation last slide में ही बता दिया है कि भाई whether one should follow or not, but still there are certain points that we need to keep in mind at the time of deciding that whether one should follow composition scheme or not. But before we do that, I think there is one aspect which requires lot of understanding and it has a very good importance. That is, we use the word as a taxable person whose aggregate turnover in preceding financial year does not exceed 150 lakhs. The important point is, what do we mean by this term aggregate turnover? Aggregate turnover में कौन सा turnover आएगा? ये बहुत ज़्यादा debatable issue है. Let us say, मैं एक manufacturer हूँ और मैं goods बना के manufacture करके बेचता हूँ. ठीक है? मेरा turnover, let us say prima facie है 200 lakh. Now the important aspect is ये जो 200 lakh है ना उसमें 100 lakh taxable है और 100 lakh exempt है. Now the important is if you say no you count only taxable turnover, then in that case I am eligible for composition scheme in subsequent year, because that taxable turnover is only 100 lakh and taxable turnover को aggregate turnover की definition में count करना चाहिए. ये एक interpretation possible है. So अगर मैं खाली टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर को काउंट करूं तो डेफिनेटली सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर में मैं कंपोजिशन स्कीम के लिए एलिजिबल हो जाऊंगा. बट अगर मान लो कि मेरा टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर 100 लाख है और एग्जाम टर्नओवर भी 100 लाख है एंड बोथ द टर्नओवर्स आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बी कंसिडर्ड फॉर डिसाइडिंग एलिजिबिलिटी ऑफ कंपोजिशन स्कीम, देन इन दैट केस मुझे कंपोजिशन स्कीम नहीं मिल सकता. क्यों? बिकॉज माई टोटल टर्नओवर विच इंक्लूड्स टैक्सेबल एंड एग्जाम्ड अमाउंट्स टू 200 lakh and accordingly I am not eligible for composition scheme. So I think everybody understand this perspective that how do you define the term as 100 lakh and 200 lakh, but that purely depends on the definition of what is mentioned in aggregate turnover. So let us try and talk about what is an actual meaning of the term aggregate turnover, friends. The term aggregate turnover has been defined under section 2 subsection 6 of CGST Act, and that very clearly says aggregate turnover means aggregate value of all, वापिस बोल रहा हूं फ्रेंड्स, aggregate values of all taxable supplies, all exempt supplies, all export supplies and all interstate supplies. Very important friends, aggregate values of all taxable supplies, exempt supplies, export supplies and interstate supply. Referring to our example, 100 lakh is a taxable turnover, 100 lakh is an exempt turnover. Aggregate turnover covers taxable turnover as well as exempt turnover. So applying that, my total turnover, my aggregate turnover turns out to be 200. And since that aggregate turnover is 200, it is exceeding 150 lakhs limit. Practically speaking, I am not eligible for composition scheme in current financial year, which I think everybody would understand this perspective. Let us try and analyze it further. Let us say my taxable turnover was 75 lakh, my exempt turnover was 75 lakh, aggregate turnover not exceeding 150, it is exactly 150, not exceeding 150, so in current year I am eligible for composition scheme. So basically to decide eligibility of composition scheme, we consider aggregate turnover, and that aggregate turnover talks about taxable as well as exempt turnover both. And that will decide by whether you are eligible for composition scheme or not. Let us move further in this particular concern, friends. When I use the word as aggregate turnover, it says taxable, exempt, export, interstate. But there is something further to be interpreted over here. I believe everybody understands that in GST we talk about the state-wise registration. So let us say you have one unit in Gujarat and you have one unit in Maharashtra. So then Gujarat has a separate registration, Maharashtra has a separate registration. I think all of you have referred the chapter of supply, and supply we have discussed this thoroughly. That you have to go for a separate registration for each state. So let us say I have one unit in Gujarat and another unit in Maharashtra. My Gujarat unit has a turnover of 50 lakh and my Maharashtra unit has a turnover of 100 lakh. Put all together, it is 150. So still I am eligible for composition scheme, but my concern is whether Gujarat's turnover should be considered independently, whether Maharashtra's turnover should be considered independently. How do you consider the turnover of the respective state? So that is where we will, how do you consider the turnover when you have two separate states? So how will you consider this? If you say, no, you don't consider state-wise turnover, you consider total turnover of the organization, then probably I need to consider both the states' total amount. And if you say, no, you can't consider aggregate, you have to consider state-wise. So if you consider state-wise, you have to understand each state and what is the turnover of each state. And wherever in state, if it crosses 100 lakhs or 150 lakhs or whatever is a limit, then we are not eligible. So for example, मान लो कि गुजरात का turnover भी 100 है और महाराष्ट्र का turnover भी 100 है. Now if you say state-wise count करो, then both the states are eligible for composition. And if you say, no, don't consider state-wise, consider total, so aggregate is 200, so you are not eligible for composition scheme. So how do you consider this? Whether we consider that state-wise, in fact, एक और point आता है कि चलो state-wise नहीं, but registration-wise count करो. Reason, because there are two separate registration. One is for Gujarat, another is for Maharashtra. So you consider registration-wise. So if you consider registration-wise, then also in both the states I am eligible for composition scheme. In both the registration numbers I am eligible for composition scheme. So do I actually consider state-wise, registration-wise, or I consider aggregate? तो उसका आंसर भी aggregate turnover की formula ही दे रही है, which says aggregate values of all taxable supplies, exempt supplies, export supplies, interstate supplies of a person having same PAN. Now this is important. It says of a person having same PAN. So one PAN has to be considered. In one PAN, whatever turnovers you generate will be put in together to decide what is called aggregate turnover. So it says aggregate turnover means aggregate values of all taxable, exempt, export, interstate of a person having one PAN, permanent account number, excluding CGST, SGST, IGST, GST compensation charge. In fact, UTGST भी होना चाहिए excluding. Important part is not excluding. They say excluding all the GSTs. So basically अगर मान लो कि कोई बंदा ऐसा है जिसका टर्नओवर 100 लाख है या टर्नओवर मान लो कि 150 लाख है प्लस उसके ऊपर जीएसटी चार्ज हुआ है 18% के हिसाब से, लेट्स से 27 lakh. So on paper it is 177 lakh recorded in your sales figure including the taxes. But if you exclude those taxes, so your net turnover turns out to be 150, so you are eligible for composition scheme. But put that taxes aside, the concern issue is of a person having same PAN. So the issue over here is, if my company has two units, one is in Gujarat, another is in Maharashtra, I'll obtain separate registration for that. But point is, for both the registration, my PAN card will remain common. So far as my organization, my company is common, my PAN card will remain common. So I don't have to consider registration-wise turnover, I have to consider PAN card-wise turnover. So if I have one PAN in which I have obtained multiple registrations, then practically speaking, I have to merge turnover of every business. So let us say not only two, let us say एक शोरूम गुजरात में और एक शोरूम महाराष्ट्र में है. कंपनी एक ही है, कंपनी का नाम है एबीसी. शोरूम एक गुजरात में है, दूसरा महाराष्ट्र में है. गुजरात शोरूम का टर्नओवर काउंट करो, महाराष्ट्र शोरूम का टर्नओवर काउंट करो, and put them together, and if that amount exceeds 150, I am straight away out. Let us say नवकार की बात कर लेते हैं. Navkar is into CACS coaching, and Navkar is into probably hell lot of other businesses. Now let us say कंपनी एक ही है और उसी कंपनी में अलग अलग डिविजन्स क्रिएट हुए हैं. सो इन दैट केस वी नीड टू कंसिडर एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर ऑफ दैट कंपनी. हाँ, अगर मान लो कि सब बिजनेस के लिए अलग कंपनी क्रिएट कर लेते हो हैविंग डिफरेंट पैन कार्ड, देन इन दैट केस यू विल नॉट फॉल अंडर दिस कैटेगरी. बट यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि यू नीड टू कंसिडर द टर्नओवर ऑफ द बेस्ड ऑन द पैन कार्ड, not based on the registrations. So you may obtain 100 registrations, but the issue is it's not a registration wise turnover, it's a PAN wise turnover. सो अगर उस पैन कार्ड में टोटल टर्नओवर 150 लाख क्रॉस कर गया तो प्रैक्टिकली स्पीकिंग आप कंपोजिशन स्कीम से बाहर निकल जाओगे. आई थिंक एवरीबडी अंडरस्टैंड मेनली व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ द टर्म एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर. सो एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर मीन्स aggregate values of all taxable, all exempt, all export, all interstate supplies of a person having same PAN excluding all the taxes. I mean, or rather GST. Other taxes will not be excluded. जो एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर की डेफिनेशन से बाहर नहीं निकलते, वैल्यू की डेफिनेशन से भी इनफैक्ट बाहर नहीं निकलते. ओनली जीएसटी विल बी रिमूव्ड फ्रॉम द एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर्स डेफिनेशन. सो आई थिंक एवरीबडी हैज अंडरस्टूड दिस पॉइंट दैट हाउ डू वी कंसिडर 150 lakhs limit, and it should be a limit which has to be checked in every year basis to decide the eligibility in subsequent years. Let us talk about the subsequent points of the provision. Now the other aspect is what about the current year limit? So let us try and talk about this. Let us say if my turnover in previous year is 100 lakh, in current year I am eligible for composition scheme. If my turnover in current year is 150 lakh, then in subsequent year also I am eligible for composition scheme. Let us say my turnover in subsequent year is 200 lakh, then the subsequent year after that is not eligible for composition scheme. So everybody has understood the point that previous year से current year का status decide होगा. Now let us put it this way, if my turnover in previous year is 150 lakh, then current year I am eligible for composition scheme. If my turnover in current year is 200 lakh, then in subsequent year I am not eligible for composition scheme. But forget about subsequent year, but current year तो मैं composition scheme के लिए eligible हूँ ना. Now the important aspect is in current year when my turnover is 200 lakh, am I eligible for composition scheme in entire 200 lakh or I am eligible for composition scheme only on 150 lakhs of the year? I am revising the question again please. If my turnover in previous year is 150 lakh, so current year I am eligible for composition scheme. Now my turnover in current year is 200 lakh, so in subsequent year I am not eligible for composition scheme. But my concern issue is whether I am eligible for composition scheme in current year. Answer is yes. But am I eligible on full 200 lakh or am I eligible on only first 150 lakhs? So that is where law has further kept a norm, has kept a criteria under section 10, which very clearly says that in current year you are eligible for composition scheme only up to the turnover limit which has been prescribed. The moment you cross that limit, from current year only for remaining portion you are out of composition scheme, and in subsequent year you are automatically out of composition scheme. Yes friends, यही होगा कि करंट ईयर में आपको कंपोजिशन स्कीम मिलेगा बट ओनली अप टू द डेट विच हैज बीन परमिटेड, ओनली अप टू द लिमिट विच हैज बीन परमिटेड. वंस यू क्रॉस दैट लिमिट देन यू आर स्ट्रेट अवे आउट ऑफ द कंपोजिशन स्कीम इन करंट ईयर ओनली. सो फॉर एग्जांपल दिस इज फाइनेंशियल ईयर 18-19. सो 18-19 में मान लो कि मेरा 17-18 का टर्नओवर लिमिट क्रॉस नहीं कर रहा है, तो करंट ईयर में मैं एलिजिबल हो गया कंपोजिशन के लिए. नाउ कंपोजिशन स्कीम एज अ लिमिट ऑफ 150 lakhs in 18-19. This is just a number which I am putting actually. So because otherwise तो 1 February 2019 से ही 150 लाख आया है, तो पहले तो 100 लाख है. But as of now मान लो कि 18-19 का लिमिट 150 lakhs है. Now 18-19 का लिमिट 150 lakhs है. Let us say on 1st February 2019 itself I am crossing 150 lakhs. Now the point is when you cross 150 lakhs on 1st February 2019, so February and March period के लिए मैं composition scheme में नहीं रह सकता because my limits has crossed. My limits have been crossed. So I am nowhere eligible for composition scheme in current year. And since मैं current year में 150 lakh के बाद वाले turnover के लिए composition के लिए eligible हूँ नहीं, subsequent year तो I have to forget कि मैं composition scheme में जा सकता हूँ. अच्छा, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, अगर करंट ईयर में 1 फरवरी को 150 लाख क्रॉस हुआ तो 1 फरवरी से 31 मार्च का जो टर्नओवर होगा उसमें मैं नॉर्मल स्कीम के हिसाब से टैक्स भरूंगा. बट 1 फरवरी तक का जो टर्नओवर होगा दैट इज 150 लाख, उसमें मैं 110% नॉर्मल स्कीम के हिसाब से टैक्स भर सकता, आई मीन कंपोजिशन स्कीम के हिसाब से टैक्स भर सकता हूं. वो टर्नओवर तो मेरा कंपोजिशन स्कीम में ही रहेगा. सो द पॉइंट विच आई एम ट्राइंग टू क्रिएट और ट्राइंग टू मेक यू अंडरस्टैंड इज कि भाई during the year you cross the limits, so you are out of composition scheme. That does not mean your entire turnover will be out of composition scheme. Whatever turnover you have reached till that limit will always remain under composition scheme and उसके ऊपर composition के हिसाब से ही टैक्स रहेगा. उसके बाद वाला जो टर्नओवर होगा when you opt out of composition scheme, in that you have to pay tax at a normal rate. बाकी जो composition वाला टर्नओवर है वो always composition scheme के हिसाब से ही consider किया जाएगा. So I think everybody understood this perspective that what are the main eligibilities and ineligibilities of the composition scheme. How do you consider aggregate turnover? Do you consider previous year turnover as well as current year turnover? So ये basic norms है. Now let us go in depth with regard to composition scheme. So I have already said, I think, that when you talk of composition scheme, it is not compulsory, rather it's an optional scheme. So you have an option to go for composition scheme. This is not mandatory. At your own convenience, at your own discretion, you have to take a call. So whether one should take a call or not, so उसके लिए एक पॉइंट तो जो हमने प्रीवियस स्लाइड में डिस्कस किया था वो यही था कि भाई वी कंसिडर दैट किसको हम बेच रहे हैं, हु इज अवर कस्टमर बेस. Because if customer base is someone who is willing to take ITC, then obviously you should not go for composition scheme. And if your customer base is someone who is nowhere interested in any form of ITC, then you should always think of following composition scheme. But still, there are points which we need to consider. Let us consider those points. One of the first point is, like when you go for composition scheme, or rather let's say first we analyze not following composition scheme. So if we don't follow composition scheme, we need to consider 4 aspects. Number one, we have to pay tax at a normal rate. और normal rate माने कौन सा? तो 0%, 5%, 12%, 18% and 28% depending on the product in which I am dealing. But I have to pay tax at a normal rate. The more important criteria is to pay tax, I am always eligible for ITC. The third important criteria is since I am paying tax and indirect tax, which I am always supposed to charge from customer. So obviously third point says charge tax separately from customer. And the last one is you have to make a tax invoice. In fact, tax invoice is the only document where you will charge the tax separately from customer. So ये 4 point always हमें ध्यान में रखने हैं जब हम कौन सी कैटेगरी में हो, नॉर्मल कैटेगरी में हो. Now let us analyze कि अगर मान लो कि मैं eligible हूँ and I wish to go for a composition scheme, then what are the points that I need to follow? So one of the first point that I need to consider is you have to pay amount at a special rate. Now the important aspect is there is a difference in terms of word. When I say I am under normal scheme, I am paying tax. While the point which I am using over here is I am not paying tax, rather I am paying amount at a special rate. So I am not actually paying tax. Government is saying if you follow composition scheme, you don't have to pay tax. But you have to pay amount at a fixed rate, at a special rate which we provide. So practically speaking, you are not paying any tax. Rather, you are paying an amount in lieu of tax, in exchange of tax, in place of tax. You are paying an amount. You are nowhere paying a tax. So a composition dealer never pay tax. He is just paying an amount in lieu of tax. Now, because of that, you are not paying tax, you are just paying an amount. ITC is altogether a separate issue because reason is ITC can be used only to pay tax. Here you are not paying tax, you are paying an amount in place of tax. You are paying an amount in exchange of tax. So because of that, you are nowhere eligible for ITC. So pay that amount without using ITC. The third point, which is equally important, is you are not paying tax. Indirect tax का concept है charge tax from customer. But if you are not charging tax from customer, then there is no question of collecting that from customer. So ये amount आप customer से collect भी नहीं कर सकते. That amount cannot be charged separately from customer, as we have discussed in that previous chart table जहाँ पे मैंने sum समझाया था आपको. If your selling price is 218, then you will end up selling at 218 only. You can't charge tax separately from customer. Reason is it's not a tax, it's an amount. So the point is when you are going in composition scheme, first you don't pay tax, you pay amount in place of tax. That amount will be at a specified rate. More important, you are paying amount without using ITC. Nowhere you are using ITC. कहीं पे भी आपको credit नहीं मिलेगा. The third one is you are not supposed to charge that amount from customer, and since you are not supposed to charge that amount from customer, since you are not paying tax, so you are not supposed to make a tax invoice, rather you are supposed to prepare a document called bill of supply. So friends, ये सारे point आपको always ध्यान में रखने हैं when you are going under the scheme which is called composition scheme. These are the very important perspective. In normal scheme you pay tax at a normal rate. In composition scheme you don't pay tax at all. You pay amount in lieu of tax, and that too at a special rate. Number two, in normal scheme, since you are paying tax, you are eligible for all ITC. In composition, you are nowhere paying tax, you are just paying amount, so you are not eligible for ITC. Number three is you are paying tax, and since you are paying tax, you have to charge it from customer under normal scheme, but under composition scheme, since you are not paying tax, you are just paying an amount, and that amount you have to pay from your own pocket. This is not a tax which you can charge from customer. And the last one, in normal scheme, since we are charging tax from customer, we make a tax invoice, while in composition scheme, we pay that amount from our pocket, and hence we are not supposed to charge it from customer, and hence we are not supposed to make tax invoice, rather we are supposed to prepare a document called bill of supply. So I think these are the basic points that we need to always consider when we think of following a scheme called composition scheme. Now let us talk about if I go for a composition scheme, I need to pay tax at a special rate. Then what is that special rate? What is the rate which I am actually supposed to follow when I go for composition scheme, friends? Now when we talk about the special rates, so these are the options that we need to consider. Precisely for a manufacturer, the rate that has been prescribed is 1% under CGST and 1% under SGST. So he is supposed to pay in and all 2%. As a manufacturer, 2% of his turnover that he is supposed to pay, 1% he will pay as CGST and 1% he will pay as SGST. But I have already said, keep this in mind, that this will not be considered as tax. This is just an amount paid in lieu of tax. So though 1% will go under CGST account and 1% will go under SGST account, this can never be segregated as tax. This is just an amount in lieu of tax. Let us move ahead subsequently, friends. Now the important aspect is this is for a manufacturer. Now the second category to whom the scheme is granted is F&B, that is food and beverage providers. Now the concern comes over here is, I think in starting only I have said that the scheme is never meant for service providers. And I believe you remember we have discussed supply, we have discussed schedule 2, where very clearly it has been mentioned as when you provide food and beverages, whether you provide in restaurant or you provide it maybe in form of catering or whatever, for food and beverage providers, composition scheme is not there. I mean, rather I would say for every service provider, composition scheme is not there. Because as per schedule 2, food and beverage services will be considered as service. Though we provide, it's a combined contract of goods and service, but the point is it will always be considered as service. And since it's a service, we have very clearly discussed that composition scheme is not there for any service provider. So the viewpoint will be that whether a service provider should claim composition scheme or not. So that is where an amendment was brought. I'll take you to the basic. When the first time GST law was, model GST law was drafted and was issued, the scheme was there only for a manufacturer and then for other people, which is our third category, all other eligible people. They are talking about traders. So I'm talking about the draft model law of 2016, June 2016 में issue हुआ था. In that, the scheme was purely for manufacturers and for traders, that is other registered people. And very clearly mentioned, this scheme is never meant for any sort of service providers. एक बहुत clear condition डाल दिया गया था जो मैं आगे आपको करवाऊंगा. The second aspect is the revised GST law which was brought in November 2016, where it was very clearly mentioned is that this law is never meant for this law is always meant for manufacturer and other registered people, which will not cover service providers. So service provider के लिए law कभी भी नहीं बना था. But what happened is in March 2017, the restaurants and their association made a strong representation to government, claiming what? That in pre-GST era, we were covered as service providers as well as traders. And state governments of the respective states were granting us composition scheme as a trader in VAT. While central government was not granting us the composition scheme in services, because in service there was no composition scheme, but there was a concept of abatement, जहाँ पे आपको एक abatement मिल जाता है, deduction, discount मिल जाता है. Now, I don't want to go into that service tax aspect. I want to consider only GST aspect. So all these restaurant people said that we were eligible for composition scheme considering the nature of food that we were serving as a goods, as a trader. So we were taking composition scheme benefit under VAT norms. We were not taking it under service norms. Now since in GST you have notified entire food and beverage segment under service category, so we have automatically been kept out of the composition scheme. But logically speaking, goods के business को consider करके आपको हमें composition scheme grant करना चाहिए. So a strong representation was made and government thought it, no, this point is correct. This is worth. And that is where, considering the food business, goods is involved, a special amendment was brought and a new in revised law. जो March 2017 में जो final law आया ना, that is the law which we are following, obviously after a lot of amendments, but जो March 2017 का law था, उसके अंदर एक specific category को add किया गया, and that is where we talk about food and beverage service providers. So only one category of service providers are eligible for composition scheme, and that is F&B service provider. और उनके लिए एक अलग से रेट प्रिस्क्राइब किया विच इज 5% है, जो इनफैक्ट प्री जीएसटी एरा में वैट का रेट था. So they were paying 5%, they are still paying 5%. So food and beverage service provider के लिए 5% का रेट है, मैन्युफैक्चरर के लिए तो मैं बोल ही दिया 2% का रेट है, 1% and 1%, 1% CGST and 1% SGST. Food and beverage suppliers 2.5% CGST and 2.5% SGST, and all other registered people 0.5% CGST and 0.5% SGST. But clearly keep this in mind that this is not considered as tax, this is considered as an amount which cannot be charged separately from customer, and more important, since you are paying an amount, there is no question of getting any ITC. So you can't charge tax. Basically this is not a tax, so you can't charge this amount from customer and you are nowhere eligible for ITC. ये point हम already previous slide में consider कर चुके हैं. Now comes a very, very important point. Let us say as a manufacturer I need to pay 2%. As a food and beverage supplier I need to pay 5%. And as a trader I need to pay 1%. But of what? So that is where they say your 2%, your 5% and your 1% shall be of turnover in that respective state, or if you are in union territory, then in that respective union territory. Then comes a concern as, okay, what do we mean by the term as turnover in state or turnover in union territory? Then that has been also defined under the GST law. Basically पूरा definition कहाँ से opt हुआ है, मैं वही point बोलूँगा. It has been opted from the original aggregate turnover definition, but still we need to consider this as separately. Turnover in a state. So what it says is, it very clearly says aggregate values of all taxable supplies and exempt supplies made within a state or a union territory. So if you are working in a state, then taxable supplies and exempt supplies made within a state. And if you are working in a union territories, then taxable supplies and exempt supplies made in a union territory. Then it also says export of goods or services or both. And it also says interstate supply of goods or services or both of a person having same PAN. But more important is यहाँ पे क्या बोला है, made from the state or a union territory by a state taxable person. So एक taxable person जो कोई पर्टिकुलर स्टेट या यूनियन टेरिटरी में काम कर रहा है जहां पे वो रजिस्टर्ड है, सो वॉट एवर turnover that he has made from such state or a union territory will be considered as his turnover in that state. मैं वापस बोलूंगा. See, एक पर्टिकुलर पर्सन है जो मान लो गुजरात में भी काम कर रहा है, महाराष्ट्र में भी काम कर रहा है, तो हिज टर्नओवर फॉर गुजरात शुड बी सेपरेट एंड हिज टर्नओवर फॉर महाराष्ट्र शुड बी सेपरेट. कोई बोले सर आपने ऑलरेडी बताया था एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर में कि दोनों टर्नओवर मर्ज हो जाने चाहिए. फ्रेंड्स, वो हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर फॉर डिसाइडिंग एलिजिबिलिटी ऑफ कंपोजिशन स्कीम. सो एलिजिबिलिटी डिसाइड करने के लिए हम एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर का डेफिनेशन लेते हैं, जबकि वंस यू आर बिकमिंग एलिजिबल, सो नाउ यू हैव टू पे टैक्स अंडर कंपोजिशन स्कीम. वो डिसाइड करने के लिए हमें एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर का डेफिनेशन नहीं चाहिए, वो डिसाइड करने के लिए हमें टर्नओवर इन अ स्टेट का डेफिनेशन चाहिए. सो दैट मीन्स टर्नओवर ऑफ द रिस्पेक्टिव स्टेट विल बी डिफरेंट. सो इफ आई से लेट्स से मेरा प्रीवियस ईयर का गुजरात का टर्नओवर 60 है और महाराष्ट्र का 40 है, तो माई टोटल टर्नओवर इज 100 lakhs. सो कंसिडरिंग दैट आई एम एलिजिबल फॉर composition scheme in current year. Now once I am in following composition scheme in current year, so I need to pay tax under composition scheme. So what tax? Yeah, what amount? So for that, I need to consider the turnovers of the respective states separately. So now I'll consider Gujarat turnover separately, I'll consider Maharashtra turnover separately. Let us say Gujarat का turnover 75 लाख हो जाता है और महाराष्ट्र का turnover मान लो कि 40 लाख हो जाता है, तो मुझे गुजरात का turnover अलग गिन के उसके ऊपर टैक्स अलग से भरना है, मुझे महाराष्ट्र का turnover अलग गिन के मुझे महाराष्ट्र के ऊपर अलग से टैक्स भरना है. सो हम रिस्पेक्टिव स्टेट का turnover गिनेंगे. तो बहुत क्लियरली बोला है कि aggregate value of all the turnovers that you make from that state will be considered as a turnover of that state. So अगर मान लो कि मैं टैक्सेबल गुड्स जो स्टेट से बेच रहा हूं तो वो, एग्जाम गुड्स जो स्टेट से बेच रहा हूं तो वो, नाउ एवरीथिंग विल बी पुट टुगेदर एज टर्नओवर ऑफ दैट स्टेट. सो मुझे गुजरात का टर्नओवर अलग गिनना पड़ेगा, महाराष्ट्र का टर्नओवर, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, बट फिर भी दे हैव पुट इन दिस टर्म दैट टर्नओवर फॉर द रिस्पेक्टिव स्टेट शुड बी कंसिडर्ड एंड रादर देन कंसिडरिंग द एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर. Now comes an important issue is, when you say turnover of the respective state, it says it covers aggregate value of taxable and exempt supplies made within a state or a union territory. So when I say taxable as well as exempt supplies made within a state or a union territory, तो that means मुझे दोनों को काउंट करना है. मान लो कि मैं एक मैन्युफैक्चरर हूं और मुझे 2% ऑफ द टर्नओवर इन स्टेट भरना है. सो मेरा टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर 60 लाख है और मेरा एग्जाम टर्नओवर 40 लाख है, तो 100 लाख का मुझे 2% भरना पड़ेगा. व्हाई शुड आई पे? मैं तो खाली टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर का टैक्स भरना चाहूंगा. व्हाई शुड आई पे टैक्स ऑन एग्जाम टर्नओवर आल्सो? सेम वे अगर मैं ट्रेडर हूं, मान लो कि मेरा 100 लाख का टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर है, 50 लाख का एग्जाम टर्नओवर है, टोटल 150 लाख है. सो टर्नओवर इन अ स्टेट इज 150. मुझे बोला है 1% भरो, बट व्हाई शुड आई पे ऑफ 150 लाख? डोंट यू थिंक सो आई शुड पे ओनली ऑफ 100 lakhs, which is my actual turnover? So that is straight away an injustice for me. So considering that, certain amendments have been brought again over a period of time and these rates have been revised after that. So what changes have been made? So that is what we need to understand. क्योंकि जो original provision है वो ये है कि manufacturer has to pay 2% of turnover in a state. Food and beverage provider has to pay 5% of a turnover in a state. And all other eligible person means traders have to pay 1% of a turnover in a state, but that turnover in a state includes exempt turnover. So then what? So that is where they brought an amendment. So what are these amended provision? So manufacturer को बोला गया कि you don't have to pay now 2%, rather you have to pay 1% only. But that 1% you have to pay of total turnover in a state or a union territory, meaning thereby आपको 1% भरना है, but आपको total turnover का भरना है और total turnover will include taxable turnover as well as exempt turnover. आपको दोनों काउंट करने पड़ेंगे. फूड एंड बेवरेज सर्विस प्रोवाइडर के लिए प्राइमा फेसी कोई बेनिफिट ही नहीं है, बिकॉज यू हैव टू पे 5% ऑफ द टर्नओवर इन अ स्टेट और अ यूनियन टेरिटरी. सो आपको टोटल का ही भरना पड़ेगा. द थर्ड इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट इज ट्रेडर. तो ट्रेडर के लिए 1% भरना है, बट द रेट इज रिवाइज एंड द अमाउंट और the criteria has been revised. They don't have to pay of total turnover. See, manufacturer को total turnover का भरना है, but traders को भरना है taxable turnover का 1% in a state or a union territory. So one of the biggest benefit or advantage that has been brought for trader as compared to the manufacturer is that manufacturer is still supposed to pay off total turnover while traders are supposed to pay off only taxable turnover. So अगर मान लो कि एज ए मैन्युफैक्चरर मेरा टर्नओवर 100 लाख है जिसमें 60 टैक्सेबल है और 40 एग्जम्प्ट है, तो आई कंटिन्यू टू पे 100 लाख के ऊपर टैक्स. वाइल इफ आई से मैं ट्रेडर हूं एंड 60 लाख टैक्सेबल है और 40 लाख एग्जम्प्ट है, तो आई पे टैक्स ओनली ऑन 60 lakhs. So as a trader, you end up paying amount on amount or tax on a separate category, and as a manufacturer, you end up paying on a separate category. हाँ, बट मैन्युफैक्चरर के लिए भी एक बेनिफिट लाया है. क्या? तो कि मैन्युफैक्चरर को 2% की जगह 1% भरना है ऑफ टोटल टर्नओवर एंड ट्रेडर को 1% ही भरना है बट ऑफ ओनली टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर. सो इट्स अ विन-विन विच हैज बीन ब्रॉट फॉर बोथ द पार्टीज. So now comes the concern as what about the food and beverage service providers? क्या उनके लिए कोई win-win change नहीं आया है? So practically speaking, food and beverage service provider के लिए there is a change which has been brought, but frankly speaking, this concept is redundant as of now for food and beverage service providers. Why? Because what has happened is जब originally food and beverage service provider के लिए हम बात करें ना, तो उनके ऊपर टैक्स का रेट 18% था और उनको ITC दिया जाता था इनपुट सर्विसेज और कैपिटल गुड्स का. लेटर ऑन गवर्नमेंट ने उनका ही रेट रिवाइज करके 5% कर दिया है, एंड दैट टू विदाउट आईटीसी. यस फ्रेंड्स, उनका टैक्स का रेट ही 18% से नोटिफिकेशन के थ्रू 5% पे ले आए, दैट टू विदाउट आईटीसी. So now what happens is, if those food and beverage suppliers wish to follow composition scheme, then also they are supposed to pay 5%. And if they want to follow normal scheme, then also they are supposed to pay 5%. In composition scheme, they are supposed to pay 5% without ITC. In normal scheme also they are supposed to pay 5% without ITC. But the important point is, in normal scheme they are supposed to pay 5% tax, while in composition scheme they are supposed to pay 5% amount in lieu of tax. The important aspect is, when you are supposed to pay tax, tax is something which we always charge from customer as an indirect tax. While when I say amount, so amount is not something which I can charge from customer. So what will happen is, if I go under normal scheme, I will pay 5% tax by charging that 5% from customer. While if I remain in normal scheme, if I remain in composition scheme, I need to pay 5% amount, and that I need to pay from my own pocket, because I can't charge that amount from customer. So practically speaking, more beneficial scheme is normal scheme. क्योंकि पहले तो नॉर्मल में आप टैक्स अलग से चार्ज कर सकते हो, जो कंपोजिशन में नहीं हो सकता. प्लस कंपोजिशन में मेरे को टर्नओवर्स की लिमिट बीच में आएगी, जबकि नॉर्मल स्कीम में कोई लिमिट बीच में नहीं आएगी. एंड मोर इंपॉर्टेंट, मुझे कंपोजिशन स्कीम में जो 5% टैक्स भरना है, वो टर्नओवर इन स्टेट के हिसाब से भरना है, विच इज टोटल टर्नओवर. और वो टोटल टर्नओवर में एग्जाम टर्नओवर भी आ जाता है. जबकि अगर मैं नॉर्मल स्कीम में जाता हूं तो 5% भरना है, और वो खाली मैं टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर का ही भरने वाला हूं. सो ऑब्वियसली मैं नॉर्मल स्कीम में ही जा रहा हूं, मैं कंपोजिशन में नहीं जा रहा हूं. However, they have brought one change and we need to understand it theoretically. एग्जाम पर्सपेक्टिव से पढ़ना है. इसके लिए बता देता हूं कि भाई टर्नओवर इन स्टेट और यूनियन टेरिटरी को बाद में थोड़ा अमेंड किया है, थोड़ा मॉडिफाई किया है. एक ऑर्डर आया है, एक सर्कुलर आया है, जिसके थ्रू ये चेंजेस लाए गए. दैट ऑर्डर और सर्कुलर वाज ब्रॉट फ्रॉम एज ऑर्डर नंबर 1/2017 dated 13th October 2017. What are the points given in order? So order very clearly says that for composition dealer who are providing food and beverage supplies, they will not become ineligible just because they are providing some sort of exempt supplies. Meaning thereby कि जो exempt supplies है, उसके कारण कभी भी वो इनएलिजिबल नहीं होंगे. एंड मोर इंपॉर्टेंट, उनके एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर या उनके टर्नओवर की डेफिनेशन में से जो एग्जाम सप्लाईज है, उन्हें एक्सक्लूड भी कर दिया गया है. लेट अस ट्राई एंड टॉक अबाउट बोथ द एस्पेक्ट. सी, आई थिंक आई हैव ऑलरेडी सेड एज कि कोई भी सर्विस प्रोवाइडर कंपोजिशन स्कीम में नहीं जा सकता. सो अगर मैं ये बोलूं कि मैं सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हूं, मैं कंपोजिशन स्कीम में जाना चाहता हूं, तो मैं नहीं जा सकता, एक्सेप्ट वन कैटेगरी विच हैज बीन अलाउड एज फूड एंड बेवरेज सप्लाईज. सो इफ आई प्रोवाइड फूड एंड बेवरेज सप्लाईज, मैं कंपोजिशन स्कीम में जा सकता हूं. अब मान लो कि मेरा एक रेस्टोरेंट है और मैं कंपोजिशन स्कीम फॉलो करना चाहता हूं, तो गवर्नमेंट मुझे अलाउ तो कर देगा. नाउ द इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट इज, उस रेस्टोरेंट में से अगर मैं अपने सर्विस प्रोवाइड करने के साथ, यानी फूड एंड बेवरेज सर्विस प्रोवाइड करने के साथ, अगर कोई ऐसी सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहा हूं विच इज प्राइमा फेसी एग्जम्प्ट सर्विस. So now the issue is, as a composition dealer, I am supposed to provide only one service, which is food and beverage service. I cannot provide any other service. But if I provide any other service, मैं composition से बाहर निकल जाऊंगा. But कभी कभी क्या होता है, कुछ inherent limitations बीच में आते हैं फ्रेंड्स. जैसे कि एग्जाम्पल के तौर पे मैं बताऊं आपको, अगर मान लो कि अपना एक प्रोप्राइटरशिप बिजनेस है, जहाँ पे हम फूड एंड बेवरेज का रेस्टोरेंट चला रहे हैं. अब मान लो कि वन फाइन डे फ्रेंड कम्स टू मी आस्किंग फॉर सम सॉर्ट ऑफ फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस. सो मेरे पास बिजनेस में कुछ पैसा था, मैंने उसको लोन के फॉर्म में दे दिया. बोला कि ओके, जस्ट टेक दिस मनी एंड यूज इट वेर एवर यू वांट इट, एंड एज एंड व्हेन यू कैन रीपे इट, जस्ट रीपे मी द अमाउंट. नाउ यू हैव रीपेड मी अमाउंट आफ्टर 1 year or 2 years along with interest. The moment you repay me that amount along with interest, it is as good as I am providing you financial services. Though that financial services is exempt, the fact is I am providing service, and since I am providing service, I straight away become ineligible for composition scheme. So one of the first thing that government provided is, a person who is providing food and beverage supply shall not become ineligible for composition scheme if along with food and beverage supply, he is also providing some exempt supply. And the term exempt supply will also include the services provided by way of giving deposits, advances or loan where consideration gets represented by way of interest or discount. So basically food and beverage के साथ अगर आप कोई और exempt service दे रहे हो तो पहले तो आप ineligible नहीं हो. Now comes an important aspect is ओके कि चलो मान लो कि मैं इनएलिजिबल नहीं हूं, मैं एलिजिबल हूं, बट वेदर माय टर्नओवर ऑफ दैट एग्जाम सर्विस विल बी कैलकुलेटेड फॉर डिसाइडिंग द लायबिलिटीज. सो फॉर एग्जांपल माय क्वेश्चन इज, लेट अस से कि ड्यूरिंग द ईयर मेरा रेस्टोरेंट बिजनेस का टर्नओवर हो गया 150 लाख. उसके अलावा मैंने किसी फ्रेंड को लोन दिया था अपने बिजनेस में से, वो मुझे लोन रीपे कर रहा है विथ इंटरेस्ट, सो दैट इंटरेस्ट विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज माई टर्नओवर. अब वो इंटरेस्ट अगर 10 लाख रुपए भी है तो मेरा एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर तो टैक्सेबल और एग्जाम का मिला के 160 lakhs हो गया. सो नाउ shall I consider 160 lakhs as my aggregate turnover and say that I am ineligible for composition scheme? So that is why they have put in this point कि for deciding your turnover you don't have to consider exempt services, rather you just have to consider food and beverage supply turnover. सिमिलर वे मान लो कि अगर मेरा 120 लाख का फूड एंड बेवरेज का टर्नओवर है और जो exempt टर्नओवर है इंटरेस्ट वाला वो 5 लाख का है. सो माय एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर और टर्नओवर इन अ स्टेट टर्न्स आउट टू बी 125 lakhs. सो नाउ आई नीड टू पे 5% फिक्स्ड टैक्स. Now, do I need to pay 5% of the total 125 lakh turnover or only 120 lakh turnover excluding the 5 lakh which is interest turnover? So, law is very clear that in all the places the relaxation has been granted, meaning thereby, number one, अगर food and beverage service के साथ आप exempt service दे रहे हो, including a loan wala service, then in that case you will continue to remain eligible for composition scheme. That is first component. Second component, अगर आप एग्जाम सर्विस साथ में दे रहे हो along with food and beverage service including interest, so exam service will not be considered in determining eligibility of composition scheme. And number 3, and once you are eligible for composition scheme, you don't have to pay tax on your exempt turnover, you just have to pay tax only on your food and beverage supplies. So basically तीनों को win-win situation दे दिया है. मैन्युफैक्चरर को अभी भी टोटल टर्नओवर का टैक्स भरना है बट 2% की जगह 1% टैक्स आ गया. फूड एंड बेवरेज सप्लायर को बहुत क्लियरली बोला कि आपको 5% भरना पड़ेगा. दो नो फूड एंड बेवरेज सप्लायर इज फॉलोइंग कंपोजिशन स्कीम. आपको 5% टैक्स भरना है बट 5% टैक्स आपको भरना है ऑफ टर्नओवर इन अ स्टेट और अ यूनियन टेरिटरी एक्सक्लूडिंग द एग्जाम टर्नओवर. आपको एग्जाम टर्नओवर के ऊपर टैक्स भरने की जरूरत नहीं है. दैट मीन्स उनके लिए भी पॉइंट यही होगा कि आपको खाली टैक्सेबल टर्नओवर पे टैक्स भरना है. And the last aspect, that is for trader, you have to pay 1%, but you have to pay only of taxable turnover rather than paying off exempt turnover. So friends, I think everybody understands कि हम लोगों को composition scheme में आज क्या situation available है और क्या benefits available है. इन सब के ऊपर से हमें कुछ examples भी discuss करने हैं. Plus, more important is there are certain ineligibilities. कंपोजिशन स्कीम में जाने के बाद आप कुछ पर्टिकुलर टाइप के ट्रांजैक्शंस कर ही नहीं सकते. सो वी नीड टू डिस्कस दोस ट्रांजैक्शंस कि कौन से ट्रांजैक्शंस आप नहीं कर सकते एज अ कंपोजिशन डीलर. जैसे कि पहला ट्रांजैक्शन, यू कांट प्रोवाइड सर्विस. सो वी नीड टू डिस्कस दैट कि ओके आप क्या कर सकते हो. इनफैक्ट उसमें भी एक अमेंडमेंट लाया गया है एंड दैट इज व्हाट वी नीड टू कवर अप. सो लेट अस जस्ट टॉक अबाउट दैट वन बाय वन, फ्रेंड्स.
If you like this video, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more such videos and learn from our expert faculty members. Press the bell icon to get regular notifications whenever we upload a new video. Download NDI mobile app to get complete CA course online. We value your support. Thank you for watching.